Blood. Glass everywhere. Victoria Ashford's Mercedes wrapped around concrete pillar, parking level B3 Ashford Tower. Gas leak spreading fast. Flames licking up from the engine orange and hungry against the fluorescent wash of emergency lights. The smell hit first petroleum burnt rubber, something chemical and wrong. Inside the crumpled driver's seat, Victoria slumped forward against the deployed airbag seatbelt locked tight across her chest. Blood trickled from her temple, dark against platinum blonde hair. Her breathing came shallow, barely visible, in the dim underground glow. The crash had happened 40 seconds ago. No one else around. 3 in the morning skeleton crew upstairs security booth on the far end of the garage. The building's fire suppression system hadn't triggered yet. Every second that passed meant the fuel spreading wider, vapor accumulating, reaching for ignition. Heavy footsteps echoed across concrete. Marcus Colknight, janitor, had just finished restocking supplies on the 42nd floor when the building's structural sensors tripped an alert. Old instincts kicked before conscious thought, that particular percussion of metal meeting stone at speed, the specific groan of a chassis folding inward. He'd heard it before, different continent, different circumstances, but the sound carved the same shape in the air. He ran toward the smoke work boots, pounding keys jangling on his belt. Turned the corner and saw the wreckage. Training from another life flooded back. Marine Corpsman, 3rd Battalion, Fallujah, 2016. Triage soldiers under mortar fire. Pulled men from burning vehicles when the IEDs caught fuel tanks. This wasn't Afghanistan, but muscle memory didn't care about geography. Marcus reached the driver's door, locked. He tried the handle twice, wasted motion, then switched angles. The impact had bent the frame inward, hinges stressed beyond function. He braced his shoulder against it, pulled with everything he had. The door screamed but held. Gas smell intensified. The flames had found something new to consume, climbing higher along the hood. 30 seconds left, maybe less, before the whole thing went up. Marcus pulled the combat knife from his boot. Always carried it, habit from deployment, the kind of thing that kept you breathing when standard tools failed. He wedged the blade between door and frame, leveraged hard. Metal shrieked. The lock mechanism gave. He ripped the door open, threw it wide. Victoria stirred slightly at the noise, a low moan escaping her throat. Unconscious but alive. Marcus checked her pulse, weak but steady, carotid strong enough. The seatbelt had jammed in the retractor, locked solid from the collision force. He sawed through it with the knife nylon parting in ragged strips. Lifted her out with a fireman's carry the way they drilled it at Camp Pendleton. Dead weight across his shoulders, her head lolling against his back. His left leg screamed in protest. Old shrapnel wound from the roadside bomb that ended his enlistment, fragments still embedded too close to the femoral artery for safe extraction. The VA docs had told him to avoid heavy lifting. He ignored it now, same as he ignored it most days when reality demanded more than medical caution allowed. 20 feet. He needed 20 feet of clearance before the tank blew. His leg buckled on the 8th step, nerve damage flaring white hot up his thigh. He pushed through it, lurching forward, Victoria's weight grinding down on the bad knee. 15 feet. 12. 10. The explosion hit like a fist to the spine, concussive wave slamming into his back. Marcus twisted mid-fall, shielding Victoria's body with his own as they went down. His shoulder blades struck concrete, first head, snapping back. Vision blurred at the edges, stars blooming in his peripheral field. Heat washed over them, the fireball expanding upward, consuming the space they'd occupied 5 seconds earlier. But Victoria was breathing. Her chest rose and fell against his steady, now color returning to her face. He'd gotten her out. Marcus lay there for 3 seconds, maybe 4, letting the adrenaline spike settle enough to assess damage. Ears ringing, shoulder throbbing, leg on fire but functional. Still operational. The training had a phrase for it: mission capable with limitations. Good enough. Security guards arrived 30 seconds later, fire extinguishers raised, radios crackling. Paramedics 7 minutes after that, stretcher for Victoria, basic check for Marcus that he waved off with practiced deflection. No, he didn't need a hospital. Yes, he was sure. Just bruises, nothing serious. They took his name for the incident report and moved on. Victoria was loaded into an ambulance, sirens fading up the parking garage ramp toward street level. Marcus watched the lights disappear, then limped back to his cleaning cart. Leg would hurt worse tomorrow. Always did after he pushed it past tolerance. He retrieved his supplies and took the service elevator down to the basement level. mopped the 43rd floor like nothing had happened, restocked paper towels in the executive washrooms, emptied trash bins in the boardroom. By 6 in the morning, his shift was done. He clocked out, rode the subway back to Queens, unlocked the door to his two-bedroom apartment where his daughter still slept, unaware her father had saved a life while she dreamed. The narrator's voice settled into the story like dust finding new surfaces. That explosion saved Victoria Ashford's life, changed Marcus Cole's future, reopened wounds from Afghanistan that would never fully heal, ended any chance of returning to the medical field, reset the trajectory of everything that followed. But Marcus never regretted it, not for 1 second. Because 10 months later, when Victoria's world fell apart in a different way, entirely, he'd be the only person who could reach the pieces left behind. The screen faded to black, then resolved into morning light filtering through thin curtains in a cramped Queens apartment. 10 months later, Marcus woke at 5:45, 3 minutes before his alarm. Old habit from the core, never let the clock catch you sleeping. The radiator clanked its morning protest steam, hissing through ancient pipes. Through the wall, his neighbor's television mumbled the early news voices, indistinct, but present, the ambient soundtrack of cheap housing, where privacy was a luxury no one could afford. He stood at the kitchen window watching the city wake up. Dawn came late this time of year, light creeping reluctant over the skyline. His hands wrapped around a chipped mug filled with coffee from a machine older than his daughter, the kind of appliance that survived on stubbornness alone. Scars mapped his forearms, not from cleaning supplies, from combat. Shrapnel wounds that had healed crooked tissue, knitting itself back together in patterns the surgeons couldn't quite control. The Purple Heart sat in his sock drawer, never displayed. Some things you earned but didn't advertise. He moved to Zoe's room on silent feet, a skill learned from night watch rotations and perfected through 3 years of single fatherhood. She sprawled across the bed, hair wild, one arm flung over the edge like she'd fallen asleep mid-gesture. The picture of Sarah stood on the nightstand. Zoe's eyes, Sarah's smile, the genetic inheritance that broke Marcus's heart every morning when he saw it. He sat on the bed's edge, hand gentle on Zoe's shoulder. "Morning, Peanut. 5 more minutes, Daddy." Her voice came out muffled against the pillow, thick with sleep. "School bus doesn't negotiate." She cracked one eye open, squinted at him, then grinned. "Carry me." 8 years old and still wanted to be carried to the bathroom. Still sought that physical reassurance that he was there, solid, not going anywhere. Marcus lifted her easy. She weighed maybe 60 pounds light, his conscience compared to the gear he'd hauled in Kandahar. But his leg protested anyway, old wound always ready to remind him of its presence. "You're getting heavy," he told her, the same lie he'd been telling for months. "You're getting old." She poked his arm where the muscle had started to soften slightly, the inevitable erosion of time working on a body that had already absorbed more damage than it should have. He set her down by the bathroom door, ruffled her hair, retreated to the kitchen to start breakfast. Oatmeal, because anything else exceeded the grocery budget. He'd learned to make it palatable with cinnamon and a careful drizzle of honey, stretching the jar to last 2 weeks. Zoe appeared 10 minutes later, face washed, teeth brushed, settling at the kitchen table with her colored pencils and construction paper. She drew while he cooked, her small hands moving with focused intensity across the page. "What you drawing, baby family portrait?" She held it up for inspection. 3 figures occupied the paper, tall man on the left, clearly him rendered in her 8-year-old interpretation of adult proportions. Small girl on the right, herself captured with more accuracy than most children managed at that age. Between them, an empty space. Not blank, she'd outlined a shape, sketched the suggestion of a person, but left it unfilled, waiting. Marcus's chest tightened. Who's that space for Zoe's expression went serious the way it did when she said things that pierced through adult defenses. "I don't know yet, but someone's missing Daddy. Can you feel it?" Kids spoke truths that adults learned to bury under practicality and self-protection. The observation landed clean, unavoidable. Maybe someone. Someday. He kept his voice neutral, not wanting to promise what he couldn't guarantee. "Mom told me, before she left." His hands stilled over the oatmeal pot. "Mom told you what?" "That you'd find someone. That I'd help." She said it matter of fact, like discussing the weather or tomorrow's spelling test. She whispered it. "When I was little. Sarah had died when Zoe was 5. 3 years gone. Car accident, the police report said. Brake failure, mechanical malfunction, no foul play suspected. But Sarah had been scared in those final weeks, mentioned something at work, people who didn't want her asking questions. Marcus had thought it was stress, job pressure, the normal friction of employment. He'd been wrong. Too late he'd learned exactly how wrong. Your mama was smart. He touched the photograph on the refrigerator. Sarah froze in mid-laugh at some long-forgotten joke. She still is. Zoe returned to her drawing, adding details to the mystery figure. She's in the stars watching. Marcus kissed the top of her head, not trusting his voice for more. They ate oatmeal in comfortable silence, the kind of quiet that families built over shared mornings and accumulated trust. He braided her hair afterward, fingers working through the tangles with practiced efficiency learned from YouTube tutorials in trial and error desperation. First week after Sarah died, he'd sent Zoe to school with her hair a mess 3 days running before Mrs. Patterson from 3B took pity and taught him the basics. They walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, hand in hand, Zoe chattering about a science project on butterflies, how they started as caterpillars and transformed into something completely different, but somehow still themselves underneath. Love you, Daddy. Love you more, Peanut. She climbed the bus steps, waved from a window seat, disappeared as the vehicle pulled into morning traffic. Marcus watched until it turned the corner, then began the 12-block walk to the subway. Couldn't afford cab fare, couldn't justify the expense when his legs still worked, even if one of them worked poorly. The limp grew more pronounced by block 8, the old wound settling into its familiar ache. He descended into the subway station, swiped his Metro card, wedged himself into a train car packed with bodies and resignation. 40 minutes to Manhattan, another 10-minute walk to Ashford Tower. He'd be there by 7:30, half an hour before his shift officially started, but early arrival meant first pick of assignments and fewer questions about why the night janitor sometimes walked like he'd been shot. Across town in a penthouse that cost more per month than Marcus earned in a year, Victoria Ashford's alarm triggered at 5 a.m. She was already awake, had been for 20 minutes lying in bed watching the ceiling and calculating merger valuations in her head. Sleep had become optional somewhere in the last decade, a luxury she traded for market dominance and shareholder value. She rolled out of bed and onto the treadmill, no transition, no warm-up, just immediate motion. 3 miles before sunrise, 4 if the day ahead looked particularly brutal. The machine's display glowed green against the pre-dawn darkness, tracking pace and distance with mechanical indifference. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Central Park 43 stories below the view, costing $8 million and delivering exactly 0 warmth. The shower afterward was precisely calibrated temperature, duration, water pressure, all programmed to specifications that some designer had assured her were optimal. Heated marble floors, rainfall, showerhead aromatherapy, steam function. Everything perfect, nothing human. She stood under the spray and felt nothing except the vague awareness that feeling nothing had become normal. Bathroom mirrors showed 32 years maintained with the same discipline she applied to quarterly earnings. Excellent bone structure, strategic skincare, preventive procedures every 6 months. Beautiful in the way corporate headshots demanded empty, in the way photographs captured, but people pretended not to see. Coffee arrived at 6:15, delivered by an assistant whose name Victoria should know but didn't. Thank you. You're welcome, Miss Ashford. The woman disappeared like hired help, learned to do present only when needed, invisible otherwise. Victoria scrolled through her tablet 47 emails since midnight, each one requiring decisions that would affect careers, budgets, entire departments. She approved a merger worth $200 million, fired an executive who'd missed quarterly targets, signed off on contracts that legal had vetted down to the semicolons. By 7 a.m., she'd accomplished more than most people managed in a full day. The office occupied 3 floors below her penthouse residence. She could reach her desk in 90 seconds using the private elevator, never encountering another human being if she timed it right. Most mornings she timed it right. James's portrait hung in the hallway outside the boardroom. Her husband, deceased husband, the man who'd promised forever and delivered 10 months before a plane crash in London ended the contract early. She passed it without stopping, the same way she'd passed it every day for the last 10 months. Stopping meant feeling. Feeling meant breaking. Breaking meant failing. The logic was airtight. Board meeting at 7:30. Eleanor Ashford appeared on video from Palm Beach, Victoria's mother presiding over the call with the same distant authority she'd applied to parenting. You look tired, Victoria. I'm fine. You're always fine. That's the problem. Eleanor's face filled the screen expertly, maintained but betraying the years in ways money couldn't quite erase. You can't run a company on 3 hours of sleep forever. Watch me. Victoria ended the call before the conversation could drift toward concern or criticism, both of which felt identical coming from Eleanor. The morning progressed in 15-minute increments. Departmental updates, strategic planning sessions, a conference call with investors in Singapore, where she spoke about growth projections and market penetration while staring at spreadsheets that reduced human effort to colored cells and trending lines. 3 floors above, in a suite designed by child psychologists and decorated with furniture that cost more than most families spent on cars, Kate Ashford sat by the window with her knees pulled to her chest. 7 years old, hadn't spoken in 10 months. Not since the phone call that turned her father into a memory and her mother into a stranger who worked too much and felt too little. Therapist number 9 sat across from her, professional smile fixed in place like default settings. "Kate, can you tell me how you're feeling?" Kate stared at the park below. Trees losing their leaves, people moving like ants, everything small and far away. "Would you like to draw?" Kate picked up a crayon, read, drew an airplane, flames coming from the wings, stick figure falling through empty air, arms outstretched, reaching for nothing. The therapist went pale. "Kate, that's..." Kate threw the crayon. Not hard, not aiming for injury, just a clear statement of communication preference. It bounced off the therapist's shoulder and skittered across expensive hardwood. The woman stood gathering her briefcase in dignity. "I'm sorry, Ms. Ashford. I can't help her. She quit. Same as the 8 before her. Same as however many would follow until someone figured out that Kate didn't need therapy. She needed her father back, and since that was impossible, she needed someone to acknowledge that impossible things hurt more than fixable ones." Patricia the nanny, 55 years old, kind, but exhausted, knocked gently on the bedroom door. "Kate, honey, please." Kate ran to the closet, locked herself inside. The darkness felt safer than light, the enclosed space more honest than the vast suite pretending to be a home. Patricia knocked for 20 minutes. Tried gentle persuasion, then firm insistence, then worried pleading. No response. She called Victoria's office. "Ms. Ashford, she's locked in again." Victoria's voice came through tinny and distant. "Give her 20 minutes. She'll come out." But Patricia had a bad feeling this time, the kind of intuition that comes from years of watching children and learning their patterns. She waited 30 minutes, 40, 45. No sound from inside. She picked the lock skill learned after month 3 of this assignment and opened the door. Empty closet, clothes undisturbed, air vent cover on the floor, screws scattered, opening large enough for a small, determined child. Security, Kate's missing, alarms triggered throughout the building, automated protocols engaging, security personnel mobilized. Victoria's assistant burst into the boardroom, room where Tokyo executives waited on screen. "Ms. Ashford, your daughter," Victoria's face drained of color. "Find her." Now she ran. Not CEO now, just a terrified mother whose child had vanished into 43 floors of corporate infrastructure and mechanical systems. Checked Kate's usual hiding spots, roof garden, executive bathroom, supply closet on 12. Nothing. Security swept every floor, cameras reviewing footage, guards checking stairwells and service corridors. Eleanor called because bad news traveled fast even when you didn't want it to. "Victoria, is it true Kate's missing?" "Pater, I can't." "This is what happens when you work 90 hours a week. Children need." Victoria hung up. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The building suddenly felt infinite, every room a possibility, every shadow a place her daughter might be hurt or scared or worse. Richard Pierce appeared in the hallway, too smooth, too helpful, smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Victoria, should we call police?" "Not yet. She's in the building. She has to be." Victoria's hands shook. She clenched them into fists, forced control back into her voice. "We find her ourselves, of course." But Richard's expression suggested this was exactly the kind of crisis he'd been waiting for, the sort of maternal failure that boards noticed and shareholders questioned. 48 minutes of searching, every second stretching longer than the last, every empty room adding weight to the fear pressing down on Victoria's chest. Basement level B2, janitor's supply room. Marcus was restocking his cleaning cart, whistling "You Are My Sunshine," Sarah's favorite song, the one she'd hummed while cooking breakfast or folding laundry, or doing any of the small domestic things that had made their life feel complete before it wasn't. The door burst open. Small tornado in a designer dress, wild eyes, blonde hair matted from crawling through ventilation ducts. Kate Ashford grabbed a mop from the rack, held it like a sword defensive stance learned from watching too many movies and living through too much fear. Marcus stopped whistling, didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Training said, wounded soldier, don't approach, don't threaten. Give them space to assess whether you're danger or safety. Wait. Kate's breathing slowed. She looked at him, really looked the way children did when they were deciding whether adults could be trusted. He wasn't scared, wasn't trying to fix her, just present, solid. There. Marcus spoke, voice soft, no baby talk, just respect. That's a good grip, solid stance. You'd make a decent Marine. Kate blinked, not the response she'd expected. Want to help me clean instead? More effective than sword fighting. He pulled a spray bottle from the cart, held it out like an offering rather than a demand. Kate hesitated, then lowered the mop. Small victory, but victories counted however they came. Secret technique, Marcus explained. Spray exactly 3 times, no more, no less. Then wipe clockwise. Very important. Kate took the bottle, sprayed once, twice, 3 times. Wiped clockwise, careful circles following instructions. First time in months she'd done what someone asked without resistance or rage. Perfect. You're a natural. Marcus returned to organizing supplies, giving her space to process the interaction. Kate watched him work for 2 minutes, then started helping. Sorting cleaning products by type. Arranging them in neat rows. Finding order in small tasks the way some people found meditation. Marcus heated water in the break room microwave, the ancient appliance humming its protest. Added cocoa powder and vanilla extract, Sarah's recipe, the one that tasted like comfort and safety. My daughter Zoe loves this, says it tastes like hugs. Kate sat on a folding chair, legs swinging, not speaking, but listening with the full body attention children gave to things that mattered. You know Zoe, she's 8, draws pictures, talks about butterflies. Marcus slid the mug across the table. What do you like, silence? But Kate held the cocoa, warming her hands. That's okay, listening's good too. He told stories about Zoe's terrible knock-knock jokes, about subway rides where they counted how many dogs they saw, about Mrs. Patterson who baked cookies every Sunday and always made extra for the girl in 4C who'd lost her mama. Normal things, safe things, the kind of details that built trust without demanding anything in return. Kate's shoulders relaxed. She leaned against the wall, first peace visible on her face in months. Marcus kept his voice steady, conversational. Your dad, bet he was a good man. Kate tensed but didn't run. Losing people. He pulled out his wallet, showed her Sarah's picture. Doesn't stop hurting, but it gets softer, like a stone in your pocket. Always there. Doesn't cut anymore. Kate looked at the photo. At Marcus. Back to the photo. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes. Missing someone means they mattered. That's not weakness. That's love. The words settled between them, simple and true. Kate nodded. Single tear tracked down her cheek. Footsteps thundered in the hallway, multiple people running. The door slammed open, Victoria's security guards, Patricia, all rushing in with panic written across their faces. Victoria prepared to scream, grab, demand explanations, then froze. Kate leaning against the janitor's shoulder, holding Coco, face peaceful. Actually peaceful in expression Victoria hadn't seen since before the funeral, before the world broke into, before and after. Marcus looked up, saw the CEO, understood immediately who she was, what this meant. He gently shifted Kate upright. Someone's here for you. Kate's face closed like a door slamming. All that peace vanishing in an instant, walls rebuilding themselves brick by brick. Victoria's heart shattered in ways that were becoming routine. Kate, honey. Kate looked at Marcus, then Victoria. Back to Marcus. Her voice came out small, barely a whisper, the first words in 10 months. Can he come tomorrow? Victoria gasped. Air left her lungs. Kate spoke. Her daughter spoke actual words strung into an actual sentence. Marcus stood, keeping respectful distance between himself and the CEO. Ma'am, I'm Marcus Cole, night janitor. Your daughter and I were just talking. Victoria couldn't form coherent response. Managed a nod. I'll be here tomorrow evening. After my shift. If that's all right. Yes. The word came out strangled. Yes, please. Kate took Victoria's hand. Voluntary contact. First time in weeks she'd initiated touch without being prompted or cornered. They left together, Kate looking back at Marcus 3 times before the elevator doors closed. Victoria didn't know his name beyond what he'd told her. Didn't know his story, his history, the reasons a man ended up pushing a mop cart through corporate hallways. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: this janitor had reached her daughter when Yale-trained psychologists couldn't. And Victoria Ashford didn't believe in miracles. But she just witnessed something that looked exactly like one. 2 a.m. Victoria sat alone in her office, 47th floor Manhattan, spread below like a circuit board of light and shadow. The security footage played on loop. Marcus with Kate in the break room. The gentleness in his movements. The patience in his posture. The way Kate responded, walls coming down piece by piece, revealing the child who'd been buried under trauma for 10 months. Victoria watched the moment Kate spoke. Rewound it. Watched again. Can he come tomorrow? 3 words that broke through silence like dawn through storm clouds. She pulled Marcus Cole's employee file. The digital version, sparse and clinical. High school graduate, no college. Employment history, United States Marine Corps 2014-2018. Honorably discharged. Reason medical. Previous occupation, Navy corpsman. Current position, night janitor, Ashford Tower. Salary $32,000 annually. No disciplinary issues. Perfect attendance record. The gaps shouted louder than the information present. Why would a Marine medic end up cleaning office buildings? What happened between discharge and this job? The file listed an address in Queens, a dependent daughter age 8. No spouse listed. Status widowed. Victoria's hands trembled as she closed the file. This man had lost someone too. Knew grief from the inside. Maybe that's what Kate recognized, the shared understanding of absence that no amount of professional training could replicate. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Linda Chen, board member, and the closest thing Victoria had to a friend. It's 2 in the morning, Victoria, she spoke. My daughter spoke. What? How a janitor? Linda. She spoke to a janitor. Victoria's voice cracked on the last word, professional veneer fracturing under the weight of relief and shame, and something else she couldn't name. Then hire him. I can't just, you're CEO. Yes, you can. Linda's voice carried the practical edge that had made her successful in venture capital. Whatever he did, it worked. Don't overthink it. Victoria hung up, opened Marcus's file again. Stared at the photograph, decent man, tired eyes, the kind of face that had seen things and chosen kindness anyway. The sun rose over Manhattan. Victoria hadn't moved from her chair, hadn't slept. Made a decision that would change everything, though she couldn't know that yet. Only felt the certainty settling into her bones. This man would spend time with Kate, however much it took, whatever it cost. 7 a.m., Victoria did something unprecedented. Rode the employee elevator down to the basement level instead of her private lift. Staff stared as she passed, shock rippling through the maintenance corridors like wind through wheat. The CEO hadn't set foot in these spaces in 5 years. Marcus was loading his cleaning cart, preparing for the day shift handoff. Supplies organized with military precision, everything in its designated place. He looked up as Victoria approached, read the determination in her posture before she spoke. Mr. Cole, I need to speak with you. Her CEO voice, the one that closed billion-dollar deals and terminated executives without flinching. She tried to soften. It failed. He followed her to a small conference room, the kind reserved for low-level meetings that didn't warrant the executive floors. Marcus stood rather than sitting, maintaining the invisible boundary between employer and employee, the hierarchical distance that buildings like this one enforce through architecture and custom. Victoria forced herself to sit, trying to equalize the power dynamic through positioning. My daughter only talks to you. I don't understand why, but I'm offering you a position. Spend time with her, help her communicate. I'll triple your salary. $96,000 annually. Benefits, whatever you need. Marcus went quiet. The silence stretched, 5 seconds, 10-15. Victoria's chest tightened with each passing moment. With respect, ma'am, you can't buy what your daughter needs. The words hit like accusation. Victoria's jaw tightened, defensive instincts engaging. Name your price. There is no price. Marcus's voice stayed level, no judgment in it, just statement of fact. But if you're asking me to spend time with your daughter, I'll do it. Not for money, because no child should feel as alone as Kate clearly does. The observation landed clean, unavoidable. Victoria felt something crack in her chest, the careful armor she'd constructed, showing hairline fractures. Why would you do that? Marcus looked at her directly, the kind of eye contact that corporate culture usually avoided between janitors and CEOs. Because 3 years ago, my wife died, left me with a 5-year-old who stopped smiling. Took 6 months before I heard her laugh again. I know what that silence sounds like, Ms. Ashford. Wouldn't wish it on any parent. Victoria sat back, facade crumbling. What changed? How did she recover, Mrs. Patterson? Our neighbor, 70 years old, bakes cookies every Sunday. Didn't try to fix Zoe, just loved her. Consistent, patient, present. He leaned against the wall, old wound making standing difficult after hours on his feet. I learned that kids don't need experts. They need people who show up. Every day, no agenda except caring. And you learned from that. Learned I couldn't do it alone. Learned that healing happens in small moments, not grand gestures. Learned that sometimes the best thing you can offer is just being there when someone's ready to trust again. Victoria's throat tightened around words that wouldn't form. After your shift, 1 hour a day with Kate, we'll call it mentoring, professional development, whatever makes HR comfortable. What about your board, Marcus asked. They'll have questions. CEO's daughter spending time with building staff. Not typical protocol, I'm CEO. They'll adjust. Victoria's voice carried more confidence than she felt. Do we have an agreement? Marcus nodded slowly. Okay, but I need to be clear. This works on Kate's timeline, not mine. Can't force connection. Can't guarantee results. Just show up and see what happens. That's all I'm asking. Victoria stood, extended her hand. They shook brief contact that somehow felt more significant than any boardroom deal she'd closed in the last year. Ms. Ashford? Marcus paused at the door. Your daughter's not broken. She's just hurting. There's a difference. He left. Victoria stood alone in the conference room, staring at the empty doorway, feeling the weight of hope settle over her like unfamiliar clothing. Richard Pierce watched from the security office monitor, banks showing every angle of the building's interior. Saw Victoria with the janitor on camera. Couldn't hear the conversation but saw the handshake, the body language, the way Victoria's expression shifted from desperation to something almost like relief. He smiled. This was perfect. Richard had been embezzling from Ashford Medical Technologies for 3 years. $50 million siphoned through shell companies in phantom billing codes, a scheme so elegant that only someone looking specifically for it would notice the pattern. Victoria was too distracted with Kate to notice, but the annual audit was 6 months away, and auditors got paid to notice things. Unless Victoria wasn't CEO anymore. He called his private investigator, the one who handled sensitive situations without asking uncomfortable questions. Need full background on Marcus Cole. Everything. Employment gaps, credit history associates, military service records if you can access them. Time frame 48 hours. Richard hung up, opened his laptop, pulled up the file labeled Victoria Removal Strategy. Added new notes. Day 1 private meeting with janitor. Duration 12 minutes. Subject daughter's care. Conclusion monitoring required. Evidence collection in progress. The board would ask questions eventually. Why was the CEO forming personal relationships with maintenance staff? Was her judgment compromised? Could she still lead effectively while dealing with family crisis? Richard would make sure those questions got him asked at exactly the right moment. He picked up his phone again, dialed a number without caller ID. The janitor. Marcus Cole. Background check in progress. If anything useful surfaces, I want leverage. The voice on the other end was professional, detached. Understood. And if nothing surfaces, then we create something. Richard looked at Victoria's photo on the company website, the polished headshot that projected competence and control. Nothing personal, just business. 7 p.m. Marcus arrived at Kate's suite, still in work clothes because he hadn't had time to change between shifts. Patricia opened the door, skepticism written across her features. Ms. Ashford said, "You're mentoring Kate." "Yes, ma'am." Patricia's expression suggested she'd heard stranger things but couldn't immediately recall when. Kate appeared behind her, saw Marcus, ran forward and grabbed his hand with both of hers. Voluntary contact. Enthusiastic contact. Patricia's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. The suite sprawled across 3,000 square feet, decorated with furniture that belonged in design magazines, filled with toys that had never been played with. Everything perfect. Nothing warm. Marcus recognized the aesthetic money spent trying to solve problems that required presence, not presence. Want to organize these? He gestured at the toy collection scattered across the floor. Expensive disorder, suggesting abandonment rather than play. Kate nodded eagerly. They sorted toys by category. Blocks here, dolls there, books arranged by color. Marcus explained the rainbow sequence. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Roy G. Biv. My teacher taught me that. Helps remember the order. Kate arranged the books with careful attention, creating a spectrum across the shelf. Stepped back to admire the work. Pride visible on her face for the first time Patricia had witnessed in months. Beautiful. You have an artist's eye. Marcus meant it. The arrangement showed aesthetic sense beyond what most 7-year-olds managed. They moved to the terrace where planters held expensive botanicals maintained by professional gardeners. Marcus showed Kate how to test soil moisture, how to water properly. Plants are like people, need water, air, sunlight, but also space. Can't crowd them or they suffocate. Kate looked at him with understanding beyond her years. Recognized the metaphor. She needed space too, room to process grief without constant intervention. Distance from well-meaning adults who wanted to fix her instead of accepting where she was. The second evening, Marcus brought construction, paper, and markers. They sat at the low table in Kate's playroom, surrounded by expensive educational toys that had never fulfilled their purpose. Want to make something, he asked. Kate nodded, reached for the red marker. Marcus drew simple shapes, a house, a tree, a sun. Kate watched his technique, then began her own creation. Her movements were deliberate, focused in ways that Patricia said she hadn't been since James died. After 20 minutes, Kate showed him the picture. A family, 4 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one medium, 2 small. She pointed to each in turn. You, Mama, me, then hesitated at the 4th figure, the smallest one. Who's that? Marcus asked gently. Kate wrote in careful letters, Zoe. Marcus's throat tightened. You want to meet Zoe? Enthusiastic nod. I'll ask your mama. But Kate, his voice carried gentle warning. Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out. Doesn't mean no, just means patience. Kate understood more than her 7 years should allow. She added details to the drawing, flowers, clouds, a rainbow, then wrote at the bottom, our family. By the 3rd evening, Kate had started speaking in short sentences. Not constantly, not without effort, but progress that made Patricia cry happy tears when she reported to Victoria. Marcus read to Kate from books about space exploration and deep-sea creatures, topics that pulled her attention outward instead of leaving her trapped in grief. When he reached the section about bioluminescent fish that created their own light in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean, Kate interrupted. Daddy used to say I was his light. Her voice came out small but clear. When it got dark, your daddy was right. Marcus closed the book, gave her his full attention. You are light, even when you can't feel it yourself. But I'm not bright anymore. Kate's eyes filled with tears. Not since he left. Light doesn't disappear just because you can't see it. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her the photo he kept as wallpaper. Zoe at the beach, laughing sun behind her, creating a halo effect. My Zoe was sad for a long time after her mama died. Thought she'd never feel happy again. But see, Kate studied the photo. She looks happy. Took time. But it came back. Different than before, but still there. Marcus returned the phone to his pocket. Your light's still inside you, Kate, just resting. Waiting for you to be ready. Kate leaned against his shoulder, a gesture of trust that made his chest ache. Will you help me find it again? Already am. Every day we spend together, you get a little brighter. Can't see it yourself yet, but everyone else can. Patricia stood in the doorway unnoticed, wiping tears with the back of her hand. The 4th evening, Marcus brought his guitar. The case was battered, covered in stickers from places he'd been stationed, venues Sarah had played. He'd avoided opening it since her death, the instrument too connected to memories that still felt like open wounds. But Kate needed music, and grief didn't get smaller by avoiding it. It got smaller by walking through it. This belonged to someone important, he told Kate, someone I loved very much. Your wife Kate's directness no longer surprised him. Yes, Sarah. She was a singer. I played for her. We'd make music together. He opened the case, lifted out the acoustic guitar. Sarah used to say music was just feelings that couldn't find words. Kate reached out, touched the strings gently. Can you teach me? Marcus positioned her small hands on the fretboard, showed her how to form a simple C chord. Press here with this finger, here with this one, now strum. The sound that emerged was imperfect, buzzing from fingers not quite pressing hard enough, rhythm uncertain. But it was music. Kate had created sound where silence had been. She looked up at him, eyes wide. I made music. You did. And tomorrow we'll make more. Over the next week, Marcus taught Kate 3 chords, C, G, AM, simple progressions that let her feel competent quickly. She practiced every evening before he arrived. Patricia reported, determined to show improvement. On the 8th evening, Marcus played You Are My Sunshine while Kate hummed along. Her voice was tentative at first, barely audible over the guitar, but by the second verse she was singing words. Soft, uncertain, but present. Victoria stood outside the door listening. She'd come to check on Kate, found something she hadn't expected: her daughter making music, engaging with life, choosing to create instead of withdraw. When the song ended, Victoria knocked softly. Kate, can I come in? Kate's face transformed, defensive walls slamming back into place. She set down the guitar, looked at Marcus for reassurance. Your mama probably wants to hear you play, Marcus said gently. Show her what you learned. Kate hesitated, then picked up the guitar. Played the 3-chord progression Marcus had taught her, singing the first verse of You Are My Sunshine in a voice that cracked but held. Victoria's tears fell freely. That was beautiful, baby. Mr. Cole taught me. Kate's pride was obvious. We're making music, I heard. I'm so proud of you. Victoria knelt to Kate's level, something she hadn't done in months. Can you teach me? The question surprised everyone, including Victoria herself. But Kate nodded, suddenly animated. You have to press hard, like this, and strum gently. Not too hard, or it sounds angry. Victoria attempted, the chord fingers cramping in unfamiliar positions. The sound that emerged was terrible strings, muted, timing off. Kate giggled. Actual laughter. It takes practice, Marcus assured Victoria. Kate's been working hard. I can see that. Victoria looked at her daughter, really looked, and saw something she'd thought lost forever: joy. Fragile, tentative, but undeniably present. After Kate went to bed, Victoria asked Marcus to stay. They sat in the living area of the suite, coffee between them, the city glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows. 2 weeks ago, she wasn't speaking at all. Victoria's voice carried wonder and confusion. How did you do it? I didn't do anything special. Just showed up, listened, didn't try to fix her. Marcus cradled his mug hands, scarred and capable. Kids respond to presence more than technique. They need to know you're not going anywhere just because they're struggling. All those therapists, all that money. Victoria shook her head. And what she needed was someone to teach her 3 chords on a guitar. She needed someone who understood that grief is normal, that being sad isn't a problem to solve. Marcus met her eyes. Your daughter's not broken, Ms. Ashford. She's just learning how to carry something heavy. Takes time. Call me Victoria, please. The formality suddenly felt absurd, given that this man knew her daughter better than she did. Marcus nodded. Victoria, then? They sat in companionable silence, both watching the city, both thinking about the impossible distance between their worlds, and how a 7-year-old girl had built a bridge neither adult had seen coming. 2 days later, Kate asked the question Victoria had been dreading. Can Marcus and Zoe come for dinner? Full sentence. Clear request. First time Kate had asked for something specific in 10 months. You want them here? Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth. For dinner, please, Mama. Kate's eyes held hope that Victoria couldn't bear to crush. Zoe's in my family picture. I want to meet her. Okay, I'll ask. Victoria felt panic rising beneath the agreement. Dinner meant cooking, hosting social interactions she'd avoided since James died. But Kate was asking, actually asking for something. How could she refuse? That evening, she approached Marcus after his time with Kate. My daughter has requested your presence for dinner. You and Zoe, tomorrow evening if you're available. Marcus hesitated, reading the fear beneath her formal phrasing. Ms. Ash, Victoria, Are you sure that's stepping pretty far outside the mentoring arrangement? Kate asked. Actually asked me for something. First time since James died that she's initiated anything. Victoria's professional mask cracked. I don't know how to cook. I'll probably burn everything. It'll be a disaster. But she asked, and I can't say no to her. Not when she's finally engaging. Marcus saw the vulnerability, the desperate mother beneath the CEO exterior. What time 7 will be there? Victoria sent her chef home that evening with instructions she'd handle dinner herself. The man looked genuinely concerned for her well-being. Ms. Ashford, you've never used that kitchen for actual cooking. First time for everything. Victoria stood in the massive gourmet kitchen after he left, staring at ingredients she'd ordered delivered. How hard could pasta be? Very hard, as it turned out. She'd chosen a recipe that looked simple on her tablet, but required coordination she didn't possess. The onions made her cry, both from the fumes and from frustration. The garlic burned while she was dealing with the pasta water. The sauce separated into an oily mess that looked nothing like the photo. By 6:30, Victoria stood surrounded by culinary carnage, close to tears, wondering if she could order catering and pretend she'd cooked it. The doorbell rang at 7. Victoria opened it wearing jeans she'd found in the back of her closet and a blouse with sauce stains she hadn't noticed. Marcus stood there in clean khakis and a button-down, his best clothes clearly thrift store purchases, but pressed with care. Zoe wore a yellow dress with butterflies, secondhand but beautiful. Both looked nervous in the way people did when wealth confronted them in hallways. Kate appeared from behind. Victoria saw Zoe and forgot all shyness. "You're here," the girls embraced like reunited friends, though they'd never met. Some connections didn't require history, just recognition of shared understanding. "You're really Zoe." Kate pulled back to look at her. "I drew you in my picture, I know. Daddy showed me." Zoe grinned. "You're really Kate, the one who's brave enough to crawl through air vents." Both girls dissolved into giggles, running toward Kate's room to compare notes on adventure and loss, and whatever else 8- and 7-year-olds discussed when grief had made them older than their years. Victoria and Marcus stood in the foyer, suddenly alone. "I should warn you," Victoria gestured toward the kitchen. "I've never actually cooked. The kitchen looks like a crime scene." Marcus laughed, genuine and warm. "Then let's solve it together." They entered the kitchen. Marcus surveyed the damaged, burned garlic, separated sauce, pasta water boiling over. "Want to start fresh or salvage this? Can we salvage it?" "Most things can be saved if you're willing to adjust expectations." Marcus rolled up his sleeves. "First rule of cooking: perfection is overrated. Food that comes with a story tastes better anyway." They worked side by side. Marcus showed her how to save the sauce by whisking in tomato paste and cream, how to rescue the burned garlic situation by adding fresh garlic and butter, how to cook pasta properly, testing for doneness by taste rather than timer. Victoria found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in months. Here in her kitchen, making mistakes with someone who didn't judge her for incompetence, she felt something close to normal. "Your turn." Marcus handed her the spoon. "Taste this and tell me what it needs." Victoria tasted. "It's good, but missing something, salt probably." "Taste again." He added a pinch. She tried again. "Oh, that's better." "How did you know?" "Practice. And making a lot of bad meals when Zoe was little." Marcus smiled at the memory. "Burned more dinners than I can count. But we ate them anyway because we were together, and that mattered more than perfect food." "James used to cook." Victoria's admission came quiet. "I worked. He handled dinners, lunches, Kate's breakfast. I told myself I was providing, being successful. Really, I was just absent." "You're not absent now." Marcus stirred the sauce. "You're here learning, trying. That's what counts." The girls returned, breathless and happy. "What's for dinner?" "Adventure pasta." Victoria surprised herself with the answer. "It's a surprise because we're not sure how it'll turn out." They sat at the table that usually seated 20 for business dinners. Tonight, 4 people made it feel like home. The pasta was imperfect, slightly overcooked sauce, not quite smooth, but nobody cared. Zoe told elaborate stories about butterflies and metamorphosis, her science project enthusiasm infectious. Kate shared about the piano piece she'd been learning before her father died, how she'd stopped playing, but maybe wanted to try again. Marcus and Victoria caught each other's eyes across the table, shared understanding passing between them. This was family, not perfect, not conventional. but real in ways that money couldn't manufacture. After dinner, the girls insisted on showing their parents a dance they'd choreographed in 20 minutes. It involved spinning, jumping, and movements that had no connection to actual dance, but infinite amounts of joy. Victoria found herself laughing, really laughing from somewhere deep that had been locked away since James's funeral. When Marcus and Zoe prepared to leave, Kate hugged Zoe tightly. "Can we do this every week?" Zoe looked at her father. "Daddy, can we? If Ms. Ash, if Victoria's okay with it." Marcus glanced at Victoria. "I'd like that." The admission cost Victoria something required vulnerability she'd been avoiding. "I'd like that very much." After they left, Kate helped Victoria clean the kitchen at first. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that families built over shared experiences. Mama Kate's voice came soft. "Are you happy?" Victoria paused, dish towel in hand, considering the question honestly. "Yeah, baby. Tonight I was happy." "Me too." Kate dried a plate with careful attention. "Mr. Cole makes things feel safe, like Daddy used to." Victoria knelt, pulled Kate into a hug. "I know, sweetheart, I know." They stood there in the kitchen, mother and daughter, both healing in different ways, both learning that grief could exist alongside joy if you made room for both. The dinners became weekly ritual. Every Tuesday evening, Marcus and Zoe would arrive at 7, and the four of them would cook together, eat together, exist as something that looked increasingly like family. Victoria learned to make spaghetti without burning garlic, then chicken without drying it out, then vegetables that actually tasted good. Marcus taught with patience that never felt condescending, turning mistakes into lessons instead of failures. Kate and Zoe became inseparable. They'd video chat every evening after homework, sharing drawings and stories and secrets that made them dissolve into giggles. The transformation in Kate was remarkable. She'd gone from silent and withdrawn to animated and engaged in the span of 6 weeks. But Victoria noticed something else developing. The way her pulse quickened when Marcus arrived. How she found excuses to stand close to him in the kitchen. The warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled at something Kate said. She was falling for him. The janitor, the widower, the man who had nothing except everything that mattered. The realization terrified her. It was the fifth Tuesday dinner when everything shifted. They'd finished eating, the girls occupied with building an elaborate fort from couch cushions. Marcus helped Victoria clean up their hands, occasionally brushing as they washed and dried dishes. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria's voice came quiet. "About your wife." Marcus tensed slightly but nodded. "You said she died in a car accident. Brake failure." Victoria dried the same plate 3 times, nervous energy needing outlet. "Was it really an accident?" Marcus went still. "Why do you ask?" "Because you mentioned she'd found discrepancies at work, that she was scared." Victoria set down the plate, turned to face him. "Marcus, if something happened, if it wasn't an accident, I need to know." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried 3 years of suppressed rage. The brake lines were cut. Clean cuts, not corrosion or wear. I saw them before they towed the car. Took photos before the cops could stop me. Victoria's blood went cold. "You're saying someone murdered her?" Sarah worked in medical billing at a hospital. Found phantom charges, fake patient accounts, money disappearing. Large amounts. She reported it to her supervisor. Marcus's hands clenched around the dish towel. 1 week later, she was dead. Police ruled it mechanical failure. Case closed before anyone asked questions. Which hospital? Victoria already knew, horror building in her chest. Not a hospital, a medical technology company. Marcus met her eyes. Ashford Medical Technologies. The words hit Victoria like physical impact. My company. She never told me the specifics, just that she'd found something wrong. That someone threatened her if she kept digging. Marcus's voice roughened. I didn't take it seriously enough. Thought it was workplace drama. Normal friction. I was wrong. Oh, God. Victoria sank into a chair, mind racing. Someone in my company murdered your wife. Covered it up, and I had no idea. I know you didn't know. Marcus sat across from her. I've been looking for 3 years. Can't find concrete evidence. Can't prove anything beyond my gut and those photos. Police won't reopen the case without new evidence. Then we find new evidence. Victoria's voice hardened with determination. I have resources, forensic accountants, private investigators, people who can dig without anyone knowing. Victoria, this is dangerous. Whoever did this has already killed once, and they'll pay for it. Victoria's eyes blazed. Your wife found fraud in my company, was murdered to keep her quiet. I'm not going to let that stand. We're going to find whoever did this and destroy them. Partners. Marcus extended his hand across the table. Partners. They shook agreement, sealed in shared purpose. What neither of them noticed, Richard Pierce had been monitoring Victoria's apartment. The private investigator he'd hired had planted listening devices weeks ago, precaution against Victoria discovering his embezzlement. Richard listened to the recording, blood turning to ice. They knew. Not everything, not yet, but they were looking. And if they found Sarah Cole's original fraud reports, they'd find the whole $50 million scheme. He made 3 phone calls that night. The first was to his fixer, the janitor. He's investigating. I need him discredited immediately. The second was to his lawyer. If certain evidence surfaces, I'll need offshore accounts accessible on short notice. The third was to the building superintendent. I need access to employee locker 127. Tonight, there's $5,000 in it for you. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work to find NYPD officers waiting. Anonymous tip about drug possession. They had a warrant for his locker. Marcus knew before they opened it what they'd find. Planted evidence. Professional frame job. The kind of thing people with money could arrange when janitors became inconvenient. The small plastic bag of white powder got on his shelf like accusation. His blood froze. That's not mine. I've never touched drugs in my life. Marcus Cole, you're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Cold metal against skin that had never expected this indignity. I'm being framed. Someone put that there? Marcus's voice rose, panic overriding training. You need to investigate who had access to this locker. You have the right to remain silent. The officer's tone suggested he'd heard every excuse, believed none. Richard Pierce watched from the second-floor balcony, satisfaction warming his chest. Perfect execution. Janitor arrested on drug charges. Credibility destroyed. Any investigation he started would be dismissed as revenge fantasy from a convicted felon. Victoria learned about the arrest during a board meeting. Her assistant burst in, whispering urgently, Ms. Ashford, Marcus Cole has been arrested. Drug possession. They're taking him now. Victoria ran, forgot about executives waiting for decisions, forgot about proper protocol, just ran toward the lobby where police were leading Marcus out. Wait, there's been a mistake. The officer barely glanced at her. Ma'am, we have evidence. That evidence is planted. I know this man. Victoria's voice carried across the marble lobby, employees stopping to stare. He's being framed, then you can visit him at the precinct. They pushed Marcus toward the exit. Zoe appeared at that moment, Mrs. Patterson holding her hand. The elderly neighbor had brought her to meet Marcus after school like she did every Tuesday. The girl saw her father in handcuffs, and her face crumpled into devastation. Daddy. She lunged forward, Mrs. Patterson barely holding her back. Marcus looked at his daughter, heart shattering into pieces he knew he couldn't repair from jail. It's okay, Peanut, it's a mistake. I'll be home soon. But he couldn't promise that. Didn't know if it was true. Kate emerged from the elevator with Patricia, saw the commotion, saw Marcus being taken away. Her face went blank, all the progress from the last weeks vanishing in an instant. She went completely silent again. Body rigid, eyes empty. Victoria stood paralyzed between her daughter melting down and Marcus being arrested. Couldn't save both. The choice felt impossible. Richard appeared at her elbow, voice pitched for sympathy. Victoria, perhaps we should discuss this privately. You did this. Victoria's voice came out deadly quiet, certainty crystallizing. Me? I'm just concerned about company image. Richard's expression suggested wounded innocence. A janitor with drug charges, having inappropriate relationships with the CEO. The board will have questions. What do you want? Step down, quietly. I'll make this all go away. Richard leaned closer. No scandal, no investigation, clean transition. Never. Then watch everything burn. He walked away, leaving Victoria surrounded by wreckage. The media exploded within 24 hours. Tabloids ran headlines that made Victoria's stomach turn. Billionaire CEO's secret romance with drug-dealing janitor. Photos everywhere, her and Marcus cooking together, captured through her apartment windows by telephoto lenses. Kate and Zoe playing their innocent friendship twisted into evidence of manipulation. Company stock dropped 8%. Shareholders demanded explanations. Eleanor Ashford called with disappointment that felt like knives. "You're embarrassing the family, Victoria." Her mother's voice carried decades of judgment. "This janitor has you acting irrationally." "Mother, he was framed. Someone in my company murdered his wife, and now they're destroying him." "You don't know that." Eleanor sighed. "You're choosing this man over your reputation, over everything your father built. I'm choosing justice over convenience." Victoria's voice hardened. "Someone killed an innocent woman. I'm going to prove it. Your father would be ashamed." "No," Victoria felt certainty settle into her bones. "Daddy taught me to fight for what's right. That's exactly what I'm doing." She hung up before Eleanor could respond. Marcus sat in holding bail, said at $50,000 he couldn't afford. Public defender offered platitudes about eventual dismissal, 6 months, maybe a year. Marcus's world narrowed to concrete walls and the knowledge that Zoe was out there without him. Mrs. Patterson brought Zoe to visit through glass partition. The girl's face was blotchy from crying. "Daddy, come home. Soon, Peanut, I promise." The lie tasted like ash. "Miss Victoria's gonna fix it, right?" Zoe's voice carried absolute faith children had before the world taught them differently. Marcus couldn't answer, didn't know if Victoria could fix anything or if trying would just destroy her too. But Victoria hadn't survived in business by accepting defeat. She converted her office into war room, hired the best forensic accountants money could buy, former FBI agents who specialized in corporate fraud, private investigators with connections in every database that mattered. Find me everything on Richard Pierce. Bank records, email logs, phone transcripts, travel receipts. I want to know every dollar he spent in the last 3 years. The team worked around the clock. Within 48 hours, patterns emerged. Shell companies, offshore accounts, money moving through layers of obfuscation designed to hide something big. Dr. Linda Chen arrived one evening with coffee and concern. "You look terrible. I feel worse." Victoria hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in a week. "But I'm close. I can feel it." "Close to what proof?" Victoria gestured at evidence boards covering her walls. "Richard's been embezzling $50 million through phantom billing codes and shell companies. Sarah Cole found it 3 years ago. That's why he killed her. That's why he framed Marcus. Can you prove the murder working on it? But I can prove the fraud, and once I do, we leverage that into reopening Sarah's case." Victoria's voice carried steel. "He's going to pay for everything." 3 days later, Victoria's investigators hit gold. Phone records showing Richard calling a known contract killer. Bank transfers matching the dates. The killer had been arrested on unrelated charges 6 months ago, sitting in prison looking for deals. Victoria's team approached him with an offer reduced sentence in exchange for testimony. The man had nothing to lose and everything to gain. He gave them everything: dates, locations, how much Richard paid, how he'd cut Sarah's brake lines and made it look like mechanical failure. Victoria took the evidence to the FBI. They opened a formal investigation, moving fast once they saw what she'd compiled. The board called emergency meeting. Richard had pushed for it, trying to remove Victoria before she could move against him. 12 members present or connected remotely, including Eleanor on video from Palm Beach. Richard opened with prepared remarks. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss the CEO's judgment and its impact on company operations." Dr. Chen cut him off. "Actually, we're here to discuss your criminal activity." Richard went pale. "Excuse me." Victoria stood, connected her laptop to the projection system. 3 years ago, Richard Pierce began embezzling from Ashford Medical Technologies. $50 million stolen through phantom billing codes and shell companies. The screen filled with evidence: bank transfers, routing numbers, shell company registrations. Every transaction documented, traced, verified. Board members gasped. Eleanor's face on screen showed genuine shock. Richard stood, voice rising. "This is absurd. You can't. Sarah Cole proved it." Victoria's voice cut like a blade. "Medical billing clerk. Discovered the fraud. Reported it. 1 week later, she was murdered. Sarah's photograph appeared on screen. Young woman with kind eyes, bright smile. Below it, the police report from 3 years ago. Car accident. Brake failure. Case closed. Richard paid $75,000 to have her killed. Victoria displayed wire transfers, phone records, testimony from the hitman. made it look like mechanical failure, buried the investigation before anyone asked questions. The room went silent. Richard's face cycled through denial, panic, rage. And when Sarah's husband got close to me, Richard panicked. Victoria's voice stayed steady despite fury underneath. Paid to frame Marcus Cole, plant drugs, destroy his credibility before he could investigate his wife's murder. Audio played through speakers, Richard offering money to the building superintendent, arranging access to Marcus's locker. Security guards moved toward Richard. He lunged at Victoria, desperation twisting his features. "You bitch, I built this company!" Security tackled him before he reached her. "No," Victoria's voice was ice. "My father built it. You just stole from it and killed anyone who noticed." Police entered on cue. "Richard Pierce, you're under arrest for embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice." "This isn't over," Richard screamed as they dragged him out. "You'll never make the murder charge stick." "Already did." Victoria held up the file. "Your hired killer gave full confession. FBI has everything. You're going to prison for the rest of your life." The door closed. Silence settled like snow. Dr. Chen called for vote, all in favor of Victoria Ashford remaining as CEO, unanimous. Even Eleanor voted yes, respect visible despite the distance. Victoria left the boardroom without celebrating, went straight to the police precinct with evidence proving Marcus had been framed. Watched as they processed his release, apologies offered, but inadequate for a week of his life stolen. Marcus walked out wearing the same clothes from his arrest, saw Victoria waiting and stopped. "It's over," her voice came steady through will alone. "Richard's arrested. Murder charges, embezzlement, everything. You're cleared." Marcus absorbed information slowly. Sarah's case reopened. FBI has evidence tying Richard to the hit. They're prosecuting. Victoria stepped closer. "I'm sorry it took this long. Sorry you had to sit in jail while I gathered proof. You saved me." Marcus's voice roughened. "Saved my daughter. Got justice for Sarah. You have nothing to apologize for. I pushed you away." Victoria's professional mask crumbled completely. "Let you sit in there alone because I was too scared to." He kissed her. Right there in the precinct parking lot, both damaged, both healing, both done, pretending the impossible thing between them wasn't real. When they pulled apart, both were crying. Kate and Zoe appeared around the corner, Mrs. Patterson holding both girls' hands. Patience had limits when your people were visible. "Daddy," Zoe launched herself at Marcus. He caught her held tight enough to hurt breathing in reality of her presence. Kate approached Victoria slowly, then hugged her mother with tentative arms. "You saved him. We saved each other, sweetheart." Victoria knelt to Kate's level. That's what families do. Kate looked at Marcus, then Victoria, then pulled out folded paper from her pocket. The family portrait creased but intact. 4 people holding hands. She'd kept it through everything. "Can we be this now?" Kate's voice was small but clear. For real, Marcus and Victoria looked at each other over the children's heads. He had nothing except love and presence. She had everything except what mattered. "Yes," Victoria's voice broke. "We can be this for real." Kate and Zoe screamed with joy, jumping and hugging and crying. Mrs. Patterson wiped her eyes, murmuring about prayers answered. Media caught them there, CEO and janitor daughters embracing family forming from broken pieces. The photograph would run everywhere, but this time the narrative was redemption, not scandal. 6 months later, Victoria stood in a different office. Smaller, filled with natural light and children's laughter instead of quarterly reports. She'd stepped down as CEO of Ashford Industries, remaining on the board with veto power. Daily operations went to Dr. Chen, who'd proven herself beyond capable. The new venture was the Sarah Cole Foundation, supporting children who'd lost parents. Therapy programs, educational scholarships, art classes, music lessons, everything Sarah would have wanted. Marcus taught music in the foundation's community center. His engineering background proved useful. He designed a recording studio where children could preserve memories in song. The studio was named the James Ashford Recording Space. 2 losses honored in one building, marriage of grief into purpose. Zoe and Kate attended the same school, now inseparable, finishing each other's sentences, being sisters in every way that mattered. Kate still had hard moments. Therapy continued. Grief didn't evaporate because circumstances improved, but she'd learned wet and happy could coexist sometimes in the same hour. One afternoon, Victoria watched through the window as Marcus helped a shy boy tune a guitar. Same patient expression from that first day in the janitor's break room, kindness that had saved her daughter and somehow saved her too. Kate appeared beside her, slipping a hand into Victoria's. "Mom, are you happy?" Victoria squeezed her daughter's hand. "Yes, sweetheart. I really am." Through the window, late afternoon sun painted everything gold. Marcus looked up, saw them watching, smiled. The kind of smile that meant home and safety and future. That evening, they gathered for the Foundation's anniversary concert. The auditorium filled with families. They'd helped children. They'd supported community members who'd witnessed transformation. Kate and Zoe performed duet piano and violin. The melody was "You Are My Sunshine." The song that had brought them together transformed into something honoring both losses while celebrating survival. Victoria sat beside Marcus, holding his hand. They'd married 3 months ago in Central Park. 50 people who mattered. Eleanor had smiled, hugged Marcus with genuine warmth, whispered, "Welcome to the family." After the concert, when the crowd dispersed and the building settled quiet, Marcus pulled Victoria onto empty stage. "I have something for you." He pulled out small box, opened it to reveal a ring. Not expensive, he still couldn't afford expensive, but chosen with care. "We're already married." Victoria smiled through tears. This was Sarah's. Marcus's voice roughened slightly. "Simple band, small diamond." She'd wanted to go to someone who understands love isn't about what you have. It's about who you choose to become. He slipped it onto Victoria's finger beside her wedding band. "You saved me as much as I saved you. Built this impossible thing when everyone said it couldn't work. Will you keep building it forever?" "Yes." Victoria's voice came fierce. 1,000 times yes. They kissed under stage lights, while their daughters watched from wings giggling. 2 years later, Sunday morning, in their Brooklyn brownstone. Middle ground between penthouse and apartment, 4 bedrooms and garden where Kate grew vegetables and Zoe painted butterflies. Marcus made pancakes slightly burned because he was telling stories. Zoe set table, arguing with Kate about music choices. The dog rescue mutt, named Charlie, ran circles around everyone. Victoria read Foundation reports at table, coffee in hand, occasionally contributing observations about pancakes. Eleanor arrived with gifts, visiting most Sundays now. Relationship with Victoria slowly mending through shared love of granddaughter. They ate breakfast together, conversation, overlapping, laughter, filling spaces that used to echo with silence. After breakfast, Marcus and Victoria walked Charlie through Prospect Park, watching families, remembering when theirs seemed impossible. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Leaving Ashford Industries?" "Not once." Victoria leaned into him. "I have everything that matters, even with a husband who burns pancakes, especially with a husband who burns pancakes." She smiled. "You taught me perfection is overrated. Presence is what counts." That evening, family portrait time. Kate's tradition maintained through years. They gathered in living room, camera on timer, squeezing together. Photo captured them mid-laugh, imperfect and real. Victoria would frame it, hang it beside other photos, Sarah and James, people who'd shaped them, but couldn't stay, watching over the family their losses had created. Bedtime found Kate and Zoe in their shared room. Marcus and Victoria took turns tucking them in. "Tell the story again," Kate requested. Which story? Victoria knew but asked anyway. "How you met," Zoe added. Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances. Once upon a time, Victoria began. A brave man saved a woman's life, and she saved his right back. Marcus continued by showing him that being broken doesn't mean being finished. They fell in love even though it was impossible. Both girls chimed in, having memorized the ending. "But love doesn't care about impossible," Victoria finished softly. "Love just finds a way." Kate yawned, already half asleep. "We were the way, weren't we, me and Zoe?" "You were exactly the way." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Smart girls." They turned off lights, closed door, stood in hallway holding hands. Years had passed since that first day in the janitor's closet, but truth remained: they'd all saved each other. Downstairs, Charlie barked at something in garden. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, family slept in peace, hard-won and deeply cherished. Marcus pulled Victoria close. "Thank you for what? For believing in me, in us, in the idea that janitors and CEOs can build families together." Victoria looked up at him. Thank you for showing me what matters, for teaching Kate to smile again, for being exactly who you are. They stood in hallway of their impossible life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight they had this moment, this peace, this proof that love could survive anything. In living room family portrait hung crooked. Marcus straightened it, gesture automatic after years of fatherhood. The photograph showed four people holding hands, two daughters whose pain had built bridge, two parents whose grief had taught them grace. They'd been broken separately, healed together, built something beautiful from pieces that remained. And in the end, that's all any family was. People who chose each other despite impossibility, who showed up through storms, who transformed grief into grace and loss into love. Marcus and Victoria headed upstairs to their own room, to the life they'd built from nothing but faith that impossible things sometimes happened. The narrator's voice settled one final time. They said it was impossible. A janitor and a CEO, different worlds, different loves, unbridgeable distance. But love doesn't care about impossible. Love looks at broken people and sees the shape they could become together. Marcus Cole was never just a janitor. He was a hero who'd served his country, a father who'd sacrificed everything, a man who chose kindness when the world gave him reasons for bitterness. Victoria Ashford was never just a CEO. She was a mother learning to feel again, a woman discovering that strength means asking for help, a leader who chose justice over comfort. Together, they proved what matters isn't what you have or where you started. It's who you are when everything's been taken away. It's who you choose to become when given the chance to start over. For Kate and Zoe, they chose to be family, and that choice made all the difference. 3 months after Richard Pierce's arrest, Victoria sat in a conference room that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The Sarah Cole Foundation's headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn, far from the sterile corporate towers of Manhattan. Exposed brick walls held children's artwork. Natural light poured through skylights. Laughter echoed from the music room down the hall. Dr. Chen had flown in from Ashford Industries headquarters specifically for this meeting. She spread architectural plans across the table, pointing to expansion proposals. We could serve 500 more children if we add the East Wing. The construction estimate is conservative, 18 months, 12 million. Victoria studied the numbers with the same intensity she'd once applied to merger acquisitions. But now the spreadsheets represented lives changed instead of profits maximized. Fund it, all of it, and add a scholarship endowment for college. These kids shouldn't have to stop at high school. Linda Chen smiled. You know, when you stepped down as CEO, the board worried you'd lost your edge. Turns out you just redirected it. I found something worth the edge. Victoria glanced through the window where Marcus was teaching guitar to a group of teenagers. His patience never wavered, even when the sounds emerging from their instruments made dogs howl 3 blocks away. What's the point of building empires if they're empty inside? Speaking of building. Linda pulled out another folder. Eleanor wants to donate $5 million to the foundation. In James's name, Victoria's throat tightened. My mother wants to donate. She called me yesterday, said she'd been wrong. About Marcus, about your choices, about what matters. Linda's voice gentled. She's trying, Victoria, in her own Eleanor way. Tell her yes, and tell her thank you. Victoria paused. Tell her I'd like her to visit the foundation. See what we're building here. She'll like that. After Linda left, Victoria walked through the foundation's halls, checking on programs. The art therapy room held a dozen children painting their feelings onto canvas, grief rendered in blues and grays, hope emerging in yellows and greens. The counseling wing buzzed with quiet conversations, trained therapists who understood that healing couldn't be rushed. In the music studio, Marcus was recording a boy named Devin who'd lost both parents in a house fire 6 months ago. The kid's voice cracked as he sang a song he'd written about missing his mom's cooking. Marcus didn't stop him, didn't offer false comfort, just let the pain exist in the music where it belonged. Victoria watched through the soundproof glass. This was what justice looked like. Not Richard Pierce rotting in prison, though that helped. Real justice was Devin singing instead of staying silent, Kate laughing instead of hiding, Zoe having a sister instead of growing up alone. Marcus emerged from the studio 40 minutes later, emotionally exhausted in the way this work always left him. Saw Victoria waiting and managed a tired smile. That kid's got talent. Raw, but real. You're good at this. Victoria linked her arm through his. Better than any therapist we hired for Kate. Different skill set. Therapists fix things. I just make space for people to fix themselves. Marcus leaned into her, finding comfort in her solidity. How was the meeting with Linda good? We're expanding. Victoria paused. And my mother wants to donate $5 million. Marcus whistled low. Eleanor Ashford writing checks for charity. Hell must be freezing over. People change. Victoria looked at him pointedly. You changed me. We changed each other. Marcus kissed her temple. That's how this works. That evening, the four of them gathered in the brownstone kitchen for their nightly ritual. Kate and Zoe had homework spread across the table, math problems for Zoe, a book report for Kate. Marcus helped Zoe with fractions, while Victoria quizzed Kate on vocabulary. The normalcy of it still amazed Victoria. A year ago, Kate wouldn't speak. Now she was arguing passionately about why The Bridge to Terabithia deserved a better ending, citing literary evidence with the intensity of a future lawyer. But it's about accepting loss, Victoria tried to explain. About learning that grief transforms you, but doesn't destroy you. I know that. Kate's expression turned serious. I live that. But Leslie deserved more than drowning. She deserved to grow up and be brave and do important things, like you're going to do. Marcus looked up from fractions. You're going to grow up brave and do important things, because you survived something terrible and chose to keep going. Kate considered this. Then can I rewrite the ending for my book report? Show what Leslie could have done if she'd lived. Show what you think Leslie would want Kate to do. Victoria smiled. That's the real assignment. The doorbell rang. Marcus answered it, found Mrs. Patterson on the stoop with a container of her famous cookies and a concerned expression. Everything all right, Mrs. P? I need to talk to you both. The elderly woman's voice carried unusual gravity. About something important. They settled in the living room while the girls devoured cookies in the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson twisted her hands, uncharacteristically nervous. I'm moving to Florida. My sister's there and she needs help after her surgery. Mrs. Patterson's eyes watered. I don't want to leave you all. You've become family. But she's blood and she's alone. Victoria felt panic rise. Mrs. Patterson had been their anchor through everything, watching Zoe when Marcus worked late, providing wisdom that came from 70 years of living, being the grandmother figure both girls needed. How long, Marcus asked quietly. Permanent. I'm selling my apartment. Mrs. Patterson pulled out a handkerchief, dabbed her eyes. I wanted to tell you first. Before I listed it, we'll miss you. Victoria's voice came out thick. You've done so much for us. You gave me purpose when I thought my useful years were done. Mrs. Patterson reached for their hands. Watching you build this family, seeing those girls heal, that's been my privilege. After she left, Marcus and Victoria sat in stunned silence. Charlie sensed the mood, resting his head on Marcus's knee in sympathy. The girls will be devastated. Victoria finally spoke. Zoe especially. Mrs. Patterson's been her constant since Sarah died. We'll help them through it. Marcus stroked Charlie's ears. Same way we've helped them through everything else. One day at a time. What if we bought her apartment? Victoria's mind was already working the problem. Keep it in our name. She could stay whenever she visits. The girls would know she has a home here always. Marcus looked at her, love and gratitude mixing in his expression. You're remarkable. You know that I'm practical. There's a difference. No, you're remarkable. Marcus pulled her close. And I'm the luckiest man alive. 2 weeks later, they hosted Mrs. Patterson's going-away party. The Foundation's community room filled with neighbors, Foundation families, people whose lives Mrs. Patterson had touched through decades of quiet generosity. Kate and Zoe presented her with a photo album. They'd made pictures of every Sunday cookie session, every homework help evening, every time she'd been there when they needed her. On the last page, they'd drawn a picture of Mrs. Patterson with wings labeled, Our Guardian Angel. The elderly woman sobbed openly. You girls have given me more joy than you'll ever know. You'll visit right? Zoe's voice was small, scared. For Christmas and birthdays, every chance I get. Mrs. Patterson hugged both girls tightly. And you can call me anytime, day or night. Distance doesn't change love. After everyone left, Victoria found Marcus on the back porch staring at the garden where Kate's vegetables were starting to sprout. Penny for your thoughts, she sat beside him. Thinking about change, how much we've all been through this year. Marcus took her hand. Sarah's case is finally closed. Richard pled guilty to avoid death penalty, got life without parole. The foundation's thriving. Kate's healed more than I thought possible. Zoe's happy in ways she never was before. But, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong. Marcus's voice carried old fear. I've learned that happiness doesn't last, that it gets taken away. Nothing's getting taken. Victoria squeezed his hand. We're building something different here. Something we choose every day. That's stronger than anything fate can throw at us. Marcus pulled her close, breathed in the scent of her hair, let himself believe. The foundation's first anniversary gala took place in Spring Central Park, blooming with possibility. Victoria had fought against the fancy fundraiser. Initially, it felt too much like her old life, too corporate, too distant from the children they served. But Linda Chen had been persuasive. You need donors beyond your own money. Let people see what you've built. Let them invest in this mission. So Victoria wore a gown that cost less than she used to spend on shoes, and Marcus wore a rented tux that almost fit, and they stood in the Plaza Hotel ballroom watching New York's elite write checks that would change lives. Eleanor Ashford arrived fashionably late, accompanied by a man Victoria didn't recognize. She made her way through the crowd with practiced grace air-kissing people she probably didn't like, but definitely needed. Victoria, Eleanor's embrace was warmer than it had been in years. You look radiant. You look surprised. Victoria couldn't help the edge in her voice. I am, pleasantly so. Eleanor gestured to her companion. This is Robert Chen, Linda's father. We've been seeing each other. Victoria's eyebrows climbed. You're dating Dr. Chen's father for 6 months now. Eleanor actually looked shy. He's teaching me about living instead of just existing. It's terrifying and wonderful. Robert Chen bowed slightly. Your mother speaks very highly of you and of what you've built here. The foundation matters. Victoria's defenses slowly lowered. We're serving 300 children now, expanding to 400 by summer. I'd like to tour the facilities. Robert's interest seemed genuine. I ran a nonprofit in Hong Kong for 20 years. Might have insights on scaling sustainably. We'd welcome that. Marcus appeared at Victoria's elbow, comfortable now in social situations that would have terrified him 2 years ago. Any advice from someone who's done this work successfully? They spent the next hour discussing operational strategies, funding models, impact measurement. Eleanor watched with visible pride as Victoria commanded the conversation with the same intensity she'd once applied to corporate takeovers. Later, after the speeches and the auction and the dancing, Victoria found her mother on the balcony overlooking the park. You seem happy. Victoria joined her at the railing. With Robert. I am, shocked but happy. Eleanor's smile was real. After your father died, I thought that part of life was over, that I'd just exist until I stopped existing. Robert showed me I was wrong. How did you meet? Linda introduced us. Thought we'd be good for each other. Eleanor turned to Victoria. She was right. He challenges me, makes me think about what matters instead of what looks good. Sounds familiar. Victoria thought about her own journey. I was wrong about Marcus. Eleanor's admission came quiet. Wrong about what you needed. Wrong about what strength looks like. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You see it now. That's what matters. Victoria hugged her mother, the gesture still slightly awkward but growing easier. Thank you for being here, for supporting this. Your father would be proud. Eleanor's eyes watered. Of the foundation, of you, of the woman you've become. They stood together in companionable silence, two women learning to bridge decades of distance through shared purpose. Inside, Marcus was teaching Zoe and Kate how to waltz. Both girls stood on his feet giggling as he spun them around the dance floor. Other guests watched with warm smiles, the image too pure not to appreciate. Victoria's phone buzzed. Text from Linda raised $2.3 million tonight. You did good, she showed it to Eleanor. We can add the East Wing now, serve those 500 kids. Eleanor pulled out her checkbook. Make it $3 million. I want to fund the scholarship endowment too. Mother, you already donated $5 million, and I'll donate 5 more next year if you let me. Eleanor's voice carried steel. Victoria recognized from genetics. I have more money than I can spend in 3 lifetimes. Let me use it for something that matters. Victoria hugged her mother again, tighter this time. Thank you. The summer brought new challenges. The foundation's success attracted media attention, features in the New York Times, spots on morning talk shows, documentary filmmakers wanting to capture their story. Marcus hated it, hated cameras following him through the music studio, hated reporters asking about Sarah's murder, hated the way they framed his story as janitor to nonprofit director, like his previous work had been shameful. I clean toilets. So what? He snapped at a particularly persistent journalist. That was honest work. Paid my bills, fed my daughter. Don't treat it like some tragedy I overcame. But the narrative sells. The reporter seemed genuinely confused. Underdog makes good. People love that story. People should love the real story. Marcus pointed to Devin, the kid who'd lost his parents now teaching guitar to younger children. That boy went from silent to singing to helping others sing. That's the story, not me. Victoria found him after the interview, stress evident in his shoulders. They want a fairy tale. Poor janitor, rich CEO, love conquers all. Simple narrative people can digest in 3 minutes. But it's not simple. Marcus's frustration boiled over. You didn't save me, I didn't save you. We saved each other. Kate and Zoe built the bridge. Sarah's death created the investigation. Richard's greed created the opportunity. It's complicated and messy and real, and I'm tired of reducing it to sound bites. So tell them no, Victoria took his hands. No more interviews, no documentary. We do the work. Let the work speak. Can we do that? Won't donors want the publicity? Donors who need publicity aren't donating for the right reasons. Victoria's voice carried certainty. We focus on the children. Everything else is noise. They issued a statement the next day. The Sarah Colo Foundation appreciates media interest, but respectfully declines further interviews. Our focus remains on serving children, not building personal brands. Some donors grumbled. Others respected the boundary. The foundation's reputation grew stronger for having principles it wouldn't compromise. Kate started 4th grade that fall. Zoe began 5th. They walked to school together every morning, backpacks bouncing, voices carrying as they debated everything from homework to whether dogs were better than cats. Victoria watched from the brownstone window, coffee in hand, marveling at the normalcy. 2 years ago, Kate couldn't speak. Now she argued with the passion of future Supreme Court Justice. Marcus joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. They grow up fast. Too fast. Victoria leaned into him. Zoe's talking about middle school already. Kate wants to join debate team. They're going to be formidable. Marcus kissed her temple. Smart, passionate, unafraid to challenge authority. Wonder where they learned that. Can't imagine. Victoria smiled. The day proceeded in comfortable routine. Victoria headed to the foundation for grant review meetings. Marcus taught music classes until 3, then picked up both girls from school. They do homework at the kitchen table while he prepped dinner. Nothing fancy, usually pasta or tacos, but made with attention that substituted for skill. Evening brought the 4 of them together. Sometimes they'd play board games that got competitive enough to require intervention. Sometimes they'd watch movies and argue about plot holes. Sometimes they'd just talk, sharing days and dreams and the small intimacies that built families. On Fridays, they volunteered together at the foundation's weekend programs. Kate helped younger children with reading. Zoe ran art workshops. Marcus and Victoria served meals, cleaned up, did whatever needed doing. The foundation families knew them not as CEO and director, but as Kate and Zoe's parents. The normalization mattered more than any publicity could provide. One Friday evening, as they cleaned up after dinner service, a mother approached Victoria, tears streaming, clutching her son's hand. 6 months ago, my boy stopped talking after his father died. Yesterday, he sang in school chorus. Because of your daughter. Because Kate told him it's okay to be and okay to sing anyway. Victoria knelt to the boy's level. What did you sing tomorrow? From Annie. His voice came out, whisper quiet but present. Miss Kate said it's a song about hope. It is. Victoria's throat tightened. And you have a beautiful voice. Don't stop using it. After they left, Marcus found Victoria crying in the storage room. Good tears, she assured him, just overwhelmed by how this all circles back. Kate was saved by music. Now she's saving others the same way. Legacy, Marcus pulled her close. Sarah would love that her tragedy created this. James, too. They held each other among supplies and canned goods. 2 people who'd learned that sometimes the most profound moments happened in the most ordinary places. The foundation's third year brought unexpected developments. The city council approached them about replicating the model in other boroughs. Mayor's office wanted to feature them in a campaign about community resilience. Universities requested case studies for nonprofit management courses. We're becoming institutional. Marcus said it like a curse. Remember when we were just helping kids, we're still helping kids. Victoria reviewed the expansion proposals. Just more of them, isn't that the goal? The goal was creating family for children who lost family. Marcus gestured at the bureaucratic documents. This feels like we're building an empire. That's your old world, not mine. It's not an empire, it's scale. Victoria's patience was thinning. We can help 300 kids or 3,000. Why wouldn't we choose more? Because more means less personal. More means kids becoming numbers in reports instead of Devin and Kate and real humans with names. Marcus's voice rose. I didn't sign up to run a corporation that happens to serve kids. The argument escalated their first real fight in 3 years together. Both carrying valid points. Both too stubborn to admit the other might be right. They slept in separate rooms that night. Morning came awkward and cold. Kate noticed at breakfast. Why aren't you talking? We had a disagreement. Victoria kept her voice neutral. Adults sometimes see things differently. Are you getting divorced? Zoe's fear was immediate, visceral. No. Marcus and Victoria answered simultaneously, emphatic. Then figure it out. Kate's tone carried no room for argument. You're the ones who taught us problems don't go away by ignoring them. So stop ignoring this. The girls left for school. Marcus and Victoria stared at each other across the kitchen table. Kids are too smart these days. Marcus finally spoke. Remember when children were seen and not heard? Kate would have rebelled against that the moment she learned language. Victoria almost smiled. She's right, though. We need to talk this through. They spent the weekend hashing it out. Compromises emerged. The foundation would expand, but maintain small program sizes. Serve more kids by opening more locations, not by cramming more children into existing spaces. Keep the personal touch that made them effective. I'm scared of losing what makes this special, Marcus admitted on Sunday evening. Scared we'll become the thing we built this to replace, cold institutional, more concerned with metrics than people. I'm scared we'll limit our impact because we're too precious about process. Victoria matched his honesty. We've created something that works. Don't we have obligation to share it widely? Maybe we're both right. And both wrong. Marcus took her hand. Maybe we expand carefully. Check each step. Make sure we're not losing soul as we gain scale. Deal. Victoria squeezed his hand. But you have to promise if you see us going wrong direction, you'll tell me. Not quietly accept it, really tell me. Same goes for you. If I'm being too rigid, too nostalgic for small scrappy version, call me on it. They kissed, an argument resolved not through one person winning, but through both people listening. Kate had been right. Problems didn't disappear through avoidance. They got smaller through honest conversation. Spring brought Victoria's 35th birthday. Marcus planned a surprise, rented out a small theater, invited everyone important. Foundation family, staff, Eleanor and Robert, Mrs. Patterson flying in from Florida, even some old colleagues from Ashford Industries. The evening was perfect chaos. Children performed songs they'd learned. Adults told stories about Victoria's transformation, from Ice Queen CEO to warmth radiating foundation director. Eleanor gave a speech that made everyone cry about watching her daughter finally find purpose. But the moment that broke Victoria came from Kate. The 7-year-old, now almost 10, grown tall and confident, walked onto stage with her violin. Zoe accompanied on piano. Together they played an original composition they'd written in secret. It was called Finding Light. The melody wove together You Are My Sunshine and a song James had written for Victoria years ago, a song she'd thought lost forever until Kate found the sheet music in a box of his belongings. The girls performed with concentration beyond their years, music honoring everyone who'd been lost and everyone who'd been found. When the final note faded, Kate spoke into the microphone. Mom, you taught me that broken things can be beautiful. That grief doesn't mean giving up. That family is who you choose. Happy birthday. I'm glad I chose you. Victoria couldn't speak, could only hold her daughter and cry while the room erupted in applause. Later, after everyone left, the four of them sat in the theater's empty auditorium. Charlie had somehow gotten inside, curled up at their feet. Best birthday ever. Victoria's voice was hoarse from crying and laughing. Thank you all. We're not done. Marcus pulled out a small box. This is from Zoe and me. Inside was a necklace, two small pendants on delicate chain. One was a star engraved with Sarah's initials. The other was a musical note engraved with James's initials. So they're always with you, Zoe explained. The people who made us who we are. Victoria clasped it around her neck, feeling the weight of memory and love. It's perfect. You're all perfect. We're not perfect. Kate's pragmatism hadn't been softened by sentiment. We're real. That's better. Summer arrived with heat that made the city shimmer. The foundation ran day camps for children, providing structure and community during months when school wasn't available. Marcus taught music camp 2 weeks intensive, where kids learned instruments, wrote songs, performed a final concert. This year, 40 kids attended, their enthusiasm making up for what they lacked in skill. Victoria ran business camp for older children, teaching financial literacy and entrepreneurship. Not typical nonprofit fare, but she'd seen too many families destroyed by debt and bad decisions. Education was protection. Kate and Zoe assisted with both camps, junior counselors earning allowance through actual work. They complained about early mornings and difficult kids, but both showed natural teaching ability. One evening, Marcus found Kate helping a boy who'd been struggling with guitar chords. She'd broken down the finger positions into smaller steps, celebrated each tiny improvement, refused to let him give up. You're good at this, Marcus observed from the doorway. Teaching. I learned from the best. Kate adjusted the boy's fingers again. You never let me quit when things got hard. I'm just doing what you did. Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. Sarah would have loved you, you know, would have been proud of who you're becoming. I wish I could have met her. Kate's voice went soft. And my dad. I wish they could see this. I think they do. Marcus pulled her close. I think they're cheering louder than anyone. The foundation's third annual gala was smaller, more intimate than previous years. They'd learned that bigger didn't mean better. Instead of hundreds of donors in a hotel ballroom, they hosted 50 people at the foundation itself. Tours through the music studio where Devin now taught beginners. The art room where walls exploded with color and emotion. The counseling wing where healing happened quietly but powerfully. Dinner was served family style in the common room. Foundation kids mingled with donors, sharing stories about what the programs meant. No speeches, no auction, just conversation and connection. We raised less money, Linda pointed out afterward. Only $800,000 versus last year's $2 million. But we built more relationships, Victoria countered. Those 50 people understand our mission deeply now. They'll advocate, volunteer, stay engaged beyond writing checks. Different model, Linda smiled. But effective. Your old board wouldn't recognize you. Good. Victoria looked around the foundation, filled with evidence of lives changed. I don't recognize me either. And I like this version better. The year ended with unexpected news. Eleanor and Robert announced their engagement at Thanksgiving dinner. We know it seems fast. Eleanor's cheeks actually colored. But at our age, why wait? Kate and Zoe were thrilled. Another wedding to attend. More family. Zoe started planning outfit immediately. I'm happy for you, Mom. Victoria hugged Eleanor. Really happy. Robert's good for you, Gom. He is, Eleanor's expression softened. He reminds me that life isn't over just because parts of it have ended. You taught me that first watching you with Marcus. Robert just helped me apply the lesson to myself. That night, lying in bed with Marcus, Victoria processed the changes. My mother's engaged to Dr. Chen's father. We're becoming one big, complicated family. Good. Marcus pulled her closer. Complicated means real. Simple is for people who don't let anyone in. When did you get so wise? Around the time I fell in love with a CEO who made terrible pasta and taught me that broken people can build beautiful things. Victoria kissed him deep and slow, grateful for every impossible thing that had led them here. Love you, janitor. Love you too, billionaire. They fell asleep tangled together, Charlie snoring at the foot of the bed, girls safe in their rooms down the hall, foundation thriving 3 miles away. 3 years ago, this had seemed impossible. Now it was just normal, just life, just family choosing each other every single day and building something that would outlast them all. Outside, snow began to fall, covering Brooklyn in white silence. Inside, the brownstone held warmth and laughter and love earned through pain, but celebrated through joy. The story wasn't over. Stories like this never really ended. They just kept growing, adding chapters, inviting new characters, proving that impossible things were only impossible until someone brave enough decided to make them real. Marcus and Victoria had been that brave. Kate and Zoe had built the bridge. Sarah and James had provided the foundation through their loss. And together they'd created something that would help thousands of children learn the same lesson. Grief doesn't have to destroy you. Love is stronger than loss. Family is who you choose. And impossible is just a word that people use before they try.